Okay, I believe we are live. Yes, okay. So what's up, everyone? Happy Saturday, July 10th, 2021, I believe is still the correct year. We are in the second 6 months of the year. So the same amount of time that has gone by to get us to this point is about to go and get us to 2022. So I'm not sure what you did with your time, but I hope it was productive. I hope these past 6 months were good for you. And if they weren't, we're at halftime of the year right now. So you have the opportunity, the chance to be able to make any changes necessary. So my suggestion before I get into this talk today on emotional sobriety, which is something that is always around the recovery world. And good morning, everyone. Ed, Jim, Beta, good morning, everyone. What I want to say this is if you want to change the course or direction of your year, if you need to do so, what you need to do is look back at the past 6 months of your year in an honest, objective, non-biased way and say, what goals did I have for myself to accomplish in 2021? Have I accomplished those goals? Have I not accomplished those goals? If you haven't, why not? And most importantly, it's okay to just acknowledge what is. Most importantly, what are you going to do different for the next 6 months of this year to be able to achieve the goals that you set out for yourself to achieve this year, right? So all that being said, today's going to be cool. It's a little bit different. I don't have any guests on, so I do want you to know that I'm very aware of the chat box. And if anybody writes any questions, I will gladly answer them during today's family education support group. And if you don't have any questions, that's okay. There will also be a link that I will provide for you. So the link that I'm putting in the comment section allows you to actually click on it. And if you don't want to show your face, you don't have to. You can actually click on it and come in with your audio and just ask your questions directly to myself. And I will respond to it live here in the family education. So emotional sobriety, if you've never heard that phrase before, it's something that one of our group members reached out and wanted to hear a little bit more about. And I will gladly cover the conversation. Emotional sobriety is something that in the 12-step communities, we hear often. It's something that Bill Wilson back in like 1958, the co-founder of AA in 1958, came up with this whole emotional sobriety concept. And here's what the concept of it comes from. It's once you stop drinking and drugging, right? Once you stop consuming drugs and alcohol, then what happens? It's that deeper work, the emotional work, the way that we are able to regulate, self-regulate our emotions, the way that we're able to respond to the world in a different version than before. If before our responses were with a few limited range of emotions, withdrawal, sadness, depression, and anger, right? Can we be at peace with ourselves? And this is a lot of work that doesn't happen right off the bat. I've yet to meet somebody that gets in the recovery program, stops using drugs and alcohol, and they're emotionally stable right off the bat, right? Because here's why. The odds of them using drugs and alcohol to self-medicate their underlying issues, to come deal with their anxiety, deal with their stress, deal with their trauma of living on the streets, trauma of letting others down, trauma of letting themselves down, the experiences they've experienced. When you take the solution to them away, what is the solution, by the way? The solution is drugs and alcohol at first. When you take that away, now they're just stuck with all of those thoughts, emotions, feelings that they've been suppressing for an extended period of time. And it all starts coming out, right? So I have a really good example before I get into this presentation that I created on emotional sobriety. Jose and John, this one was kind of motivated and inspired by our conversation that we had on the topic. So I will tell you this, that I want you to imagine addiction. And for those of you in the side chat that are, recovering drug addicts, alcoholics, this is a really good analogy. But for the family members, I want you to imagine this. Addiction is like getting in a car and driving on like the Autobahn of Germany as fast as you can. Okay, so you're driving as fast as you can. And as you're driving, you're just throwing into your car various experiences, various arguments, various fights, various letdowns, disappointments, even the good stuff. You're just throwing these things in your car, throwing it in your car, throwing it in your car, throwing it in your car. And then when a person decides to get clean and sober, whether by choice or by force, it's kind of like they slam the brake on this car that's been moving fast for years, sometimes decades. And as soon as they slam the brakes, what happens to all of the different things that they had accumulated and thrown in the car over time? Well, you don't have to be a visual person to understand this one. When you slam the brakes and your car is full of a lot of stuff, they fly from the back and they hit you in the back of the head. They cover the entire dashboard with the objects, cover your dashboard to the point that, first of all, you get a little shook because you might have got a concussion. Second of all, you can't see clearly to the other side of the road. So in this moment, it becomes actually really overwhelming for people, because when you can't see where you're going, when you're afraid of moving forward, when the car can't go the same way, the best thing to do is to start taking a look at these boxes one by one that were stuffed in the car for a long period of time, looking at it from different perspectives, right? Changing the way you look at them, changing the way you experience them, changing the way you recall them, changing your memories and all that kind of stuff, changing the way you look at things because the things you look at change. Doing your work through the process of the steps. The fourth step is something that's really valuable for these items I'm talking about. And what happens is eventually you grab these items and you slowly, right? They get smaller and they're not covering up your window. And you get to start driving a little slow on that same road. And as you're driving slow, this is where the emotional sobriety stuff starts to come in place. But you know what a lot of people do in early recovery? In early recovery, when everything slams them in the back of their head. Oh, what's up, Keith? I have to say hi to you, man. Long time. Really good to see you here. You're one of the people I definitely looked up to back in the 2013, 2014 time. So I appreciate you, bro. So as you're driving, what a lot of people do is when everything hits them in the back of the head, just slams them in the back of the head, they get overwhelmed. They can't see. They throw everything back in the car and they floor it again. They go as fast as they can in the same direction again, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, decade after decade. So emotional sobriety is the individual who's getting clean and sober. It's their ability to kind of look at the emotional baggage and also how to live life on life's terms after they get clean and sober. So it's a really solid talk. And for family members, by the way, there's emotional sobriety that comes in when your loved one gets clean and sober. Why is that the case? Well, for a long period of time, your sole purpose and intention was highlighted, is like magnified on the addiction of your loved one, of your son, of your daughter, of your spouse, of your grandchild. You're just hyper focused on their addiction. And then when they get clean and sober, there's no longer anything to focus on. Because here's the thing, when you're focused on somebody else, you know what you're not focused on? Yourself. When I'm worried about my kid, when I'm worried about my spouse, when I'm worried about my grandkid, I'm not taking a look at myself because that problem is greater than what I'm experiencing. And then when the person gets clean and sober, that's where the real work begins for the family member. How long did I lose myself for? How have I neglected myself over the years? What have I sacrificed? Right? And that's where the real work comes in. So again, if you have any questions on this topic, feel free to add in the side chat. You can click the link and come join me live, but I'm going to go through this a little bit. Got some stuff ready for you. And if you want to know if yourself or someone in your life is experiencing emotional sobriety, I'm going to give you some checklists of things to look for. Okay. Number one is I'm practicing letting go of resentment, jealousy, and envy. Okay. So one of the biggest signs of emotional sobriety is, can I start to get at peace with myself? Because a person that's at peace with themselves is also at peace with their world. That means they're doing their best on a daily basis to try to let go of harboring resentments to people, places, and things. They're trying their best to let go of having jealousy or envy towards others. Because when you're okay with yourself, none of that matters anymore. And when a lot of people get clean and sober, check this out. They are not okay with themselves. They are not okay with the reflection they see back at them. It's a hard image to be at peace with. Because why? Everything you wanted to do in life, you've given up. You've lost a lot. There's been a lot of heartbreak. People don't trust you. You don't trust yourself. And that individual can easily be resentful, can easily have jealousy, can easily have envy. So the work of emotional sobriety allows them to kind of make that process through it. The next one is I'm strong. So strong euphoric or sad emotions don't cause me to drink. Now this is important too. So we talk about these things called triggers in recovery. Family members, you have your triggers too, by the way, right? But for addicts or alcoholics, if you want to call them that, there are serious euphoric, like really good feelings, or really bad feelings, like the celebration or the kind of the grief that leads them, because the emotions are so high, it leads them to reach out for something to drink to de-escalate their emotions so they can cope with it. So emotional sobriety says this, that during the high of the highs and the lows of the lows, I don't look for alcohol or drugs to be the solution. That is a sign of emotional sobriety. So if you're not looking for drugs and alcohol for the solution, that means the person has learned, developed, gained various coping skills to be able to manage that. It's a wonderful thing. So the next one, you're approaching emotional sobriety is when you are, Jim, thank you for that. I'm going to put this comment up, actually. This is huge. Jim, some of you guys know Jim, some of you don't. Sober member of the community, number one. Second of all, a very damn good clinician. Said something here that is very important. So he said emotional sobriety has a different time frame for everybody, right? A different time frame. This is important because we're all unique, different journeys. Some people, there's a school of thought, which I kind of do agree with on some level, that they say your emotions, they stop progressing and stop maturing when you start picking up drugs and alcohol in the form of addiction. So if someone started picking up at a really young age, 16, 17, 20, 21, 22, when their brain was still developing, at that point, their emotional development and maturity really does stagnate. Sometimes even just stops, it halts. That's why when people get clean and sober later on, they act like adolescents. They act like children sometimes, depending on when they started or whenever they experience significant amounts of trauma. And it's kind of like, hey, you're a grown man or woman. Why are you acting like a child? Well, emotional development was stagnated at that point. It was halted. So it definitely has different time frames, Jim. I wholeheartedly agree with you on that one. I'll put my little comment thing back up here today. Again, if anybody has any comments or questions, feel free to. I will gladly answer them today. So the next one that I have here is I'm able to make, what's up, Bailey? Good to see you. I hope you're doing well. Good to have you on this thing. So the next one about emotional sobriety says, I am able to make decisions without unduly influenced by my emotions. So my emotions don't dictate the actions that I take. That is something that's completely contradictory to the world of addiction. The world of addiction, our emotions have us like a hook, and they take us wherever the hell they want to go, right? In the world of recovery, when you're actually in emotional sobriety, you can experience emotions. You can notice your emotions. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling mad. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling excited, and not do anything about it. It's not just like a hammer that hits and you react. You can respond to your emotions through talking with people, through coping skills, through resting, through going to meetings, through taking care of your mind, your body, your health. We're not a prisoner to our emotions when we're having emotional sobriety. And by the way, like I remember I say everything I tell you guys that relates to individuals using drugs and alcohol, all this stuff relates to family members too. I mean, how many of you family members, if you answer this one honestly, here's a question. When your emotions got triggered and heightened because of the addiction of your loved one, did you actually have a say in what you were doing, or were you like a robot at that point, going autopilot? Just the emotions took you wherever the heck they wanted to take you. I know this for a fact. I've talked to family members that are highly triggered by their emotions. They can't even function. They legitimately can't function. They can't have one objective thought because they're so triggered by their emotions. So when we have emotional sobriety, we're able to. It's a powerful thing. So the next one about emotional sobriety, if you want to know if you're experiencing it or other people are experiencing it, I am certain enough of my own values and beliefs that I'm not thrown off by social pressure. So there is something that happens very commonly in early recovery. So someone, let's say that they're trying to get off of drugs and alcohol, and we'll just say they're trying to get off of opiates. And they meet some people that don't have addiction problems. So whether it's like a date or they go out somewhere and there's a group of people and they might not have a problem. So they might be engaging with drinking some alcohol at a restaurant or a bar. When someone does not have any emotional sobriety, when someone does not have any certain belief and understanding in their values, when someone's not fully committed to being strong in the face of social pressure, sometimes they say, man, I just didn't know what to do. And I just took a drink. I didn't want to tell them I was a drug addict. I didn't want to look bad. The peer pressure got to me. I just felt embarrassed. So that happens in early recovery often. It happens on dates all the time. You know, a guy or girl is going to go out with someone and they're sitting down across from them, and the partner, the date, the spouse, the whatever you want to call it, the person they just met on a dating app orders a drink, and they don't want to acknowledge their addiction, and they order a drink too, and they come back and say, oh my gosh, I can't believe I took a drink, right? So just abstaining from drugs and alcohol doesn't bring that emotional sobriety, because the appropriate response would be, hey, I'm allergic to alcohol. I actually don't drink. It goes against my beliefs. I'm staying away from alcohol because of some life decisions I'm making at this point in my life. I mean, there's a lot of stuff we can say, but that doesn't come in early recovery. And to be able, one of the best things I have that I love about this analogy is they say in life, it's important to be like a mountain. Okay, to be like a mountain. If you look at a mountain, around it, no matter how many thousand feet up in the air it is, around it, the environment is always changing. Storms are coming, clouds are coming, rain's coming, snow's coming. The mountain's environment is so volatile, but the mountain always stays the same. It never changes because of its environment, regardless of what's going on. In recovery and sobriety, one of the goals is this, my friends: to stay the same, to thine own self be true, regardless of what's happening around you, right? It's okay to wear different hats in life. See, it's okay for me to have this professional clinical hat with you right now, and then go to my parents' house and have a hat that I wear with them, and be with my wife and have a hat that I wear with her, and be with the kids that I coach and have a hat that I wear with them, or be a dog dad and have the hat that I wear. However, emotional sobriety means all the different hats that we wear in life, they need to go on the same head. Did you catch what I said there? We need to be the same person regardless of what's happening. In early recovery, this is hard for people. This morning I just did a talk for all of our program participants, all the, people in our recovery community at 8:00 this morning. We moved it up an hour just to make them a little more uncomfortable. No, it's just scheduling. I had to do that. But I'll tell you this, that I told them a quote that I want you to hear right here. And this goes to each and every single family member that might watch this later on. Your new life is going to cost you your old life. Okay? Your new life is going to cost you your old life. So there's one thing we have to change in recovery, and that one thing is everything. And that's a big pill to swallow for some people. Some people say, hey, what do you mean? I got to let go of everything? I don't know. How bad do you want a new life? And it's that's a really, really, it takes a lot of maturity to digest that comment right there. So the next one is, this is huge. I am becoming able to enjoy life as a sober person. This is a huge sign for emotional sobriety. So for the individual getting clean and sober, I'm able to enjoy life as a sober person. Our Chad, our director of housing, he said this thing that when he thought he's going to get clean and sober, he thought his life is over. He legitimately thought his life is over and he's never going to have fun again. And then he realized, like, oh man, how wrong was I? And when a person in the recovery process starts to realize that not only are they able to have a life, they're able to enjoy life and see the world in a whole new set of eyes, it's a beautiful thing. And it's a definite sign of emotional sobriety. Family members, same thing too. Can you start enjoying your life as somebody who's in the recovery process? Because in the beginning, there's so much guilt and shame. I've talked to enough parents. I have a master's degree in marriage and family therapy. I'm a licensed clinician. So imagine what type of conversations I've had with family members that are struggling with mental health and addiction of their loved one. When they first start talking about it, they talk about it with so much guilt and with so much shame. When they talk about their kid's addiction, they just feel like they've done something wrong, like they're handcuffed. They feel like they failed as a parent. And emotional sobriety in a family member means, hey, my kid's addiction was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. My kid's addiction allowed me to start looking at myself, my life, what I have done, what I haven't done, who I am, who I'm not. It helped me become a better father, a better mother, a better spouse, a better worker. My kid's addiction was a gift to me. That's the sign of emotional sobriety. You go in the room sometimes and you hear people say they're grateful for their addiction, right? Grateful for my addiction. I'm grateful for the addiction of my loved one. At first, you listen to them and you say, how the hell is this person grateful for the most painful thing that's ever happened to them? Well, pain is a beautiful thing. You know, the wound is where the light enters you, as Rumi says. So the next one is the need to be right no longer influences my relationship. So people come in very self-righteous into the program. They're right about the fact that life did them wrong. They're right about the fact that their mom or dad was X, Y, and Z. They're right about the fact that society is unfair. They're right about the fact that guys are this or girls are that. They're right about the fact that relationships are horrible, that you can't trust people. They're right about the fact that politics are this or politics are that. They're so self-righteous. And all that line of thinking has gotten them to where they are. So emotional sobriety tells us this, that, hey, in life, I know Jim's going to say something about this one. It's today we can either choose to be right or be happy. And we choose to be happy. You know, being right is just such a overwhelming, it's got a bad taste in the mouth. There he is. Today I would rather be happy than right. I knew it. I've known this man for 6 years now, and there was zero doubt in my mind that he was about to say that comment. And this is exactly what it is right here, my friends. It's today I would rather be happy than right. And if I asked the Jim that was struggling with addictions, living on the streets, 17 years ago or whatever it is, 17 years ago, for a long period of time, he was right about a lot of things. And I promise you that man was not happy. He was walking around right about a lot of different things. And hey, I'm glad you're happy today, Jim, too. It's pretty cool. So yeah, by the way, if anybody has any questions or needs me to elaborate on any of these, feel free to. Normally I've been bringing on somebody else each week and having a dialogue, as you've been seeing, and got really good feedback from it. But I don't know if it's I got the bug to teach something, or I missed it a little bit, or I just want to bring a little more balance in here. I kind of decided to do this one. So there's a few more here for emotional sobriety that I want to share with you. So this could be these ones are really important to see in your loved ones, by the way, if that's what you're watching this for. Is I'm not controlled by the opinions of others. So sign of emotional sobriety means the opinions of others. A lot of the people that come through programs, man, they're so hard on themselves, and they're so hard on what the world thinks of them. Like, they're critical, and they have a fear of the criticism of others. And when you truly have emotional sobriety, man, you just don't care because you're so solid with who you are. And again, that takes time to get there. I promise you this. It took me about 1.5 years after I got clean and sober to just say, you know what? I think I'm going to be all right. I was so full of guilt and shame about my life. I mean, I was so just embarrassed, to be honest, about what I had become, that it took me 1.5 years to just say, okay, I'm not embarrassed anymore. Like, when I had conversations with people, I didn't have to lie about what I was doing. I remember the first year of my sobriety, I lied so much. And I'm saying this smiling because it's like, what do you mean you lied? Don't you have to be honest? No, I lied about what I was doing, what I wasn't doing, who I was, who I wasn't. I mean, what was I going to tell people when they asked me, so what are you up to these days? Well, I just go to a 12-step meeting every day, and I'm just trying to get my life back together. No, man, I lied about that stuff because there was so much embarrassment I had with it. It really, really was. And then what happened was I started to feel good about what I was doing. Like, if you do enough esteemable acts, you start to develop self-esteem. And I started looking at myself and saying, you know what? I'm fucking proud that I go to meetings every day. I'm happy that I go to meetings every day. It's making me a better person. But the first few, I mean, come on, in the beginning, there was a lot of shame connected to that. And yes, this is a really good comment here. I think this is from the Al-Anon world. It's what other people think about me is not my business. My business is what I think and feel about myself. Yep. The other way to say that, Hossein John, is your opinion of me is none of my business, right? And it's a really good way to go about it, because we are so critical with that stuff. So the next one here, there's only 3 more that I have for you about, someone is in emotional sobriety when I can move freely between the emotional states of a child, adult, and a parent. So this is if you have different hats that you wear. Some people that come in recovery don't have these different hats, but it's exactly what I was talking about, that you can be who you need to be comfortably and not have it be forced or have it bleed into another area of life, right? Because you all know that when you get triggered emotionally in one area, like let's say you're upset about your kid's addiction, and all of a sudden you're taking it out on your spouse or your relationship, or you're withdrawal and isolated and not doing anything at home, or you're going to work and you're just so consumed that you're not being a good employee. So emotional sobriety allows us to go from hat to hat to hat in a healthy manner. The next one here is, I am growing more honest, the absence of the attempt to deceive. So this was, again, another thing there that I'll give you an example of myself. This one's so ridiculous, but just to know like the lies that people say in early recovery or when they don't have emotional sobriety, because people can say lies regardless, right? I remember I had this one time in my life that I was just in early sobriety. I think I took the drugs and alcohol away from me. So I had like this sweet tooth, and I had this like urge to have like high caloric fatty stuff. And this is before I was a vegan and all that, my old lifestyle, if you will. So I wasn't drinking, but I had this urge for sugars and sweets and cravings and stuff like that. I was eating ice cream every night, and I'd go get fast food. I'd go to like, Carl's Jr., McDonald's, whatever the hell I was eating at the time. And I would go to AA meetings. So I'd go to Carl's Jr. and get like Western bacon cheeseburgers and crisp cut fries and a big milkshake or something like that. And I go to the AA meeting and they say, "Oh, you want to go to lunch?" I'm like, "Oh, actually I had lunch." "Oh, what did you have?" "Oh, I had this 6-inch turkey sandwich from Subway, and I didn't get any chips, and I had a Diet Coke with it." And I remember like knowing I'm lying to this person in real time, but I was so just uncomfortable with honesty, that I would just lie about something so stupid. It's not like the person gave a shit that I had junk food, but it took me a while till I started to be able to realize that I could tell the truth and people still like me. That's something that comes really important. It just came to me. A lot of individuals in early recovery, they don't think people like them. And why do they not think people like them? Well, they look at their resume and they look at their history and they're like, "Well, I've done a lot of things that makes people not like me." So they start to identify with their actions of addiction rather than who they are as a human being. And when you realize that people like me regardless of what I've done in my addiction, and I'm a likable person, it changes everything. So I'm just trying to give examples of myself because I know a lot of you think highly of my character and the way that I present and talk. But when I was, a lot of your loved ones' places, or, for those of you in addiction, when I was trying to get sober too, man, I was not, I struggled in the early stages. The next one here is, when someone's in emotional sobriety, when they derive genuine, healthy pleasure from helping others without the thought of reward, money, prestige, or station. So when people get clean and sober, they always think this in the beginning. They say, "What's in it for me?" And even if you're not trying to get clean and sober, even if you're just a human being, one of the first thoughts that people have before they engage with something, "What's in it for me?" Right? And emotional sobriety doesn't say, "Hey, what can I get out of this situation?" Emotional sobriety says, "What can I give to this situation? How can I contribute to life? How can I contribute to this person over here? And am I willing to do it without compensation back? Am I willing to do it without getting some type of prestige back, some reward back, or some pat on the back? Am I willing to do it just because I'm going to do it?" And that's a huge sign. That's a huge sign. It's people that, for example, volunteer their time, their ear, their love for other people. There's honor in that, man. And it's, when you're fully stuck and caught up in your addiction, whether it's addiction of self or addiction of your loved one, you're not thinking about others. You're thinking about your loved one and you're thinking about yourself. And that's about it. So the last one, it is, I'm able to stay present and endure both hardship and pleasure. So one of the characteristics of people struggling with addictions is their mind goes anywhere but here. So the present moment, and here's why, by the way, because at some point in their life, the present moment was uncomfortable. The present moment was overbearing. The present moment was too much for them to handle. So instead of staying in the present moment, their mind would go daydream. Their mind would think about a bunch of different things. Their mind would be anywhere but here just to cope, right? You think when kids are playing video games for 25 hours in a 24-hour day, you think they're doing it because they're present? They're doing it because they're not paying attention to the present. When people start using drugs and alcohol, you think they're doing it because they don't want to, they're experiencing their feelings right now? No, they don't want to experience their feelings right now. They check out, it's called. And so emotional sobriety is, hey, I could sit in the present moment, whether it's good or bad, and I can just sit and be there. One of the people that I like describes the word boredom, because a lot of people say they use drugs and alcohol because they're bored. He describes boredom as the inability to sit with oneself. How beautiful of a definition is that? So boredom is the inability to sit with oneself. So why would someone be unable to sit with oneself? Because at some point in their life, sitting with themselves was painful. And emotional sobriety says, hey, I'm okay with sitting with myself. I could do this. So now the flip side of this, it's been halfway point right now. Any thoughts, questions, comments? Feel free to write them on the side. I am paying attention. So I want to give you some triggers to watch for. And this is, again, for you as a family member. These could be for you. Oh, you're welcome, Bita. It's, yeah, the honesty is always the best way to go, because, you know, there's different phases. This is what she said. She's just saying, thank you for the honesty. Yeah, what's the point of saying that, hey, I never had flaws or I didn't struggle in early recovery? Because here's the thing, people like your family, your loved one, they are going to struggle with honesty. They are going to struggle with being solid at all times. And my vulnerable, honest communication allows you guys to see that, hey, that's just a part of the process, right? And yeah, so it's and yeah, I was saying, John, transformation is a lifetime process, doesn't happen overnight. You know, I love this other one too. It's people overestimate what they can do in a month and underestimate what they can do in a year. So a lot of people come in, or even, how about this? People overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in 5 years, right? So it's all about perspective. So I want to tell you some triggers which threaten emotional sobriety. So this is, again, for yourselves or for your loved ones. So some of these signs, they call them the dry drunk syndrome. Have you ever heard like someone's a dry drunk? It means they're not really actively working a program, working on themselves. So number one is they feel feelings of superiority, right? So they feel like when they're recovering, whether as a family member or an alcoholic, they feel they exaggerate like their sense of self, or they feel like they got this. They feel like they don't need it. They're done with it. And what does that even mean? I mean, that's what they say, right? Oh, I'm good now. I'm good. I'm fine now. Here's the thing. I don't think anybody is ever good on any level, because life is constantly evolving and changing, and so are we, right? I always say this, the most highest level, the top performing athletes in the world have coaches. Like the person that's a master at their trade, the Steph Curry of the world. If you guys don't know who Steph Curry is, watch Steph Curry consecutive 3-pointers. Like he made like 100 3-pointers in a row just shooting the ball. So he's perfected shooting a basketball from 30 feet out to the point he can make 100 without missing it, which is pretty much impossible to mortal folks. He's got a shooting coach, right? The best shooter in the world has a shooting coach. So when someone tells me, hey, they got this, my emotions are fine now. I don't need someone to help me with my emotions. I don't need to transform. I don't need to evolve. That's a really scary moment, because at that moment, that person said, I'm committed to just staying the same. And that doesn't even happen. There's nothing in life that can work with stagnation. Even the purest water in the world, right? The purest water in the world, if it stagnates and doesn't move, it can turn into green, sick algae. There could be bugs, infestations. If you go in that water, it's like toxic to the human being. So we always got to constantly move forward. The next one is intolerance. This one's huge. When a person becomes really, really judgmental to others, pointing a lot of fingers. They say if you point one finger back at someone, you're pointing 3 fingers back at yourself, right? 1 finger at someone else, you got 3 back at yourself. So when this trigger poorly managed, it turns into anger. People that are judgmental and they're intolerant, it turns into anger. Something in the big book, it says, it is plain that a life which includes deep resentment leads only to futility and unhappiness. So Yeah, anytime I ever catch myself resentful about anything, I do whatever I have to do to process through it. I don't even like to hold on to it for an hour, let alone a day, let alone a week, a month, a year, because I know the pain of that. I've held on to resentments lifelong. I held on to like 15-year resentments when I got sober. And it didn't do any good for anyone. It was just something you learn. Yeah. What is resentment? Resentment is having some poison, right? Taking the poison and wanting the other person to die. Yeah, it just doesn't work that way. The next one, a trigger that can cause threaten emotional sobriety for self and for your loved ones, is the need for instant gratification of one's personal desires becomes an overriding concern. So it's okay once in a while, I'm going to give you once in a while to want some instant gratification, right? Like once in a while, it's okay. Because, hey, we're conditioned that way. I mean, when the microwave got created, it screwed everything up, right? When our expectations of food became 3 minutes later, I should be full, it screwed everything up. The internet is causing instant gratification. All the streaming channels we have without commercials are causing instant gratification. It's everywhere in our lives. It's programmed in us. However, personal desires and managing emotions, they have their own timeline. It's dangerous when the impulsive neediness is like, hey, I need it and I need it now. Sounds like a child, doesn't it? Like an adolescent. I want it now. Well, dude, you're like 37 years old or you're 58 years old. Like there's no such thing as you want it now. So it really does threaten it. I've seen people get really on edge because they need something to happen. It's like, go back to my journey again, just for Bita's comment. When I got sober at 25 years old, almost 25 years old, again, I had no college degree. I had no certifications, nothing. And then I go to class and they tell me, well, it's going to take you 1.5 years to get your certification. I'm like, well, fuck, what am I going to do for 1.5 years? What am I going to tell people I'm doing? I'm going to be 26 and a half years old. I need something quicker. There was no quicker way to do it, right? I remember working at a GNC during that time, and my friends would come it was at the mall, the Mission Viejo Mall. It's no longer there, but my friends would come in and like they would see me. They're like, "Oh, you're working at GNC?" And these guys are like all college graduates and doing really well for themselves. Like, yeah, we're here to get some protein. Like, well, let me help you find your protein. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way. But there was like this feeling that I had that I want to just be that counselor. I want to have my degree right now. I don't want to be going through this experience. And eventually I got there, and then they're like, all right, well, you want to get your bachelor's degree. It's another 2-3 years on that. And you want to get your master's degree. It's like 7 years on that. It's like, I don't want to wait 7 years. I want to be a therapist right now. There's no such thing, man. There's no such thing. So if I had my impulsive neediness would have took me out to like, I need it now, maybe I would have just derailed off the track. So patience is very undervalued in the recovery process. I think patience is the most important thing in the recovery process. Obviously, remaining committed and abstaining from mood and mind altering substances is the prerequisite. That's a non-negotiable. But after that, I think it's patience for family members, patience for the individual going through it. We didn't get here overnight. You're not going to get out of it overnight. If it took 10 years to get here, man, just buckle up. It's going to be a long ride. If it took 20 years to get here, double buckle up. It's going to be a really, really long ride, but it takes what it takes. The other triggers are ignoring potential consequences. So when people start acting out and doing things, not concerned about consequences, it becomes really dangerous, because what happens is you are free to take any actions in life. However, you are not free of the consequences of those choices. So let me see if I can say that again. So in life and in recovery, you're free to choose to take any action you want to take. Free will. However, we are not free from the consequences of those choices. Every action has a consequence, good or bad. Yes, positive consequences are also consequences, or negative consequences. When you decide to make that action, that means at the same time, you've also chosen that you're going to accept the consequence that comes with it. A danger to emotional sobriety is when you say, I'm going to do whatever I want, I'll deal with it later. Well, guess what? Deal with it later is the formula that everybody's failed to do with like the IRS, for example, because I'll deal with it later is like, yep, you will. And so is life. If you push your emotions off to later and deal with them later, it's coming back 100%, million percent. I've yet to see someone avoid something and it just goes away. Right. And another way of saying it's like, you're making progress or not making progress in life is if the problems you have today you still had a year ago, then you're not making progress, right? So, do you have the same problems today that you had a year ago, and for some of you a decade? And the last one here is this one's interesting. It comes from this guy named John Wellwood, and it's this philosophy. It's this ideology called the spiritual bypass. So it says, using spiritual ideas and practices to sidestep personal, emotional, unfinished businesses, to shore up a shaky sense of self, or to belittle basic needs, feelings, and develop. So sometimes when people come in the recovery world, they will overcompensate with getting too spiritual or getting too deep into something or too obsessed into something, kind of like a spiritual bypass. In a way, and it might be conscious or unconscious, but in a way to avoid doing the internal work. So when I focus externally, whether if it's something even positive like spirituality, at the same time, I might not be looking as much internally. I think the spiritual bypass, sometimes this happens with health and fitness, believe it or not. People get obsessed with exercise or the gym, or a relationship bypass. I just thought about that one. People go full blown into a relationship. They bypass their emotions and dump it into another relationship or just avoid it. And it comes back and gets them. So avoiding all bypasses, and this goes for family members too. Don't just substitute your kid's addiction with another way to not look at yourself again, right? Like you can't do that. So everything I'm saying that relates to families, it also relates to loved ones. And the time for rejoicing. So I guess there's just quick things, right? Just 5 things. Emotional sobriety is like validated almost when there's fewer and fewer approval-seeking behaviors. So that means that you're so confident in yourself that you're not constantly seeking the approval of other human beings, people, places, and things to pat you on the back, say you got this. Like you just know you got it. Don't get me wrong. We all want to be acknowledged. We all want to be appreciated, but we all don't need to take actions to cause other people to approve of us, right? Like we've already been approved by ourselves. The next one is fewer expectations of peoples and events. So they say expectation is the root of all heartbreak. The higher your serenity is, the lower your expectations. The higher your expectations are, the lower your serenity. It's a zero sum. When someone has the ability to apologize, that's kind of cool. We continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. That's a sign of emotional sobriety, man. When you're able to apologize, not apologize just for the past, apologize for life, man. Stuff that comes up all the time. A willingness to forgive. Sign of emotional sobriety is the person willing to forgive. And I'll answer that question real quick in a second. There's someone popped the question. Let me just finish this one. And the willingness to be forgiven. So willingness to forgive is one thing, right? Hey, I forgive you for whatever the heck you did in my past, but willingness to be forgiven. I always tell people, man, you got to forgive yourself. You did the best you could with what you knew at the time, with what you had at the time. And you can't keep holding that against yourself. You got to have some practice self-compassion. So let me see what Bonnie said here. I haven't read the question yet, but I saw a question mark. If you have resentment with someone, is it better to express to a person who caused it? So Bonnie, thank you for that question. It's a great question. There's a few factors here I would like to clarify, I guess. So communication is always the most important way between point A and point B. So between you and that individual, communication is that gap that helps kind of close it. It closes the gap. Now, there's a few things about communication. It's not what you say, but how you say it, right? And also, is the person that you're going to be talking to, are they going to be in a state of mind that they're able to hear what it is you're saying? Are they able to receive what it is you're saying? I don't know anything about the other person. Honesty always is the best policy, except when to do so will injure them or others. So, if what you're going to do is going to make the situation worse, right? If it's going to injure that person or yourself even worse, it's always a way to just pause on that one until you get a little bit more, the environment becomes a little bit more manageable. But I do believe that resentment is something you want to share with someone. But there's one thing you want to do, though. You always want to look at your side of it. How has this impacted you? What has this resentment caused in you? Like, you want to always look at both sides of the resentment. So what is what they've done to you, right? What's happened? But as a result of what's happened, how has that impacted you? Because what happens is when we include ourselves in the conversation, it allows for the person to hear us a little bit differently, because it's not all about them. It's not like not an attack, but it's not just externally focused. It's also internally focused. So if you have an example, feel free to share it. But if not, I hope that helped you. And thank you for the question. I really do like it when it gets interactive. And you don't have to do this right now, but this link that I'm putting on here, I'll just share it for future weeks. You guys all see that link that says StreamYard.com. I do this with another clinician regularly. I could probably put it up. Yeah, this link. It's in the comment box. And every Monday I do this talk on YouTube with Dr. B. And it's worked out so wonderful, man. So we have people from all over the world. And when I say all over the world, man, I truly mean this, like Serbia, UK, India, Australia, South Africa. You can't even imagine how many people come on and talk to us. But all they do is they click on this link that we have that I shared for you guys. It's in the comments. And what it does is it allows you to hop on the screen with me, or in that case with us, but with me here. And even if you don't want to show your face, which I understand that, it allows you to come on with your audio, with your microphone, and have a direct conversation with me. So for example, in this case, if you have resentment with someone, it's better to express to the person who caused it. And by the way, let me add one thing there. If it's really fresh or really boiled up or you're really emotional about it, this is where a third-party clinician, a counselor, a therapist, a sponsor, someone was going to be the first line of defense, because you get to practice saying it to them. You get to practice talking about it. You get to get the emotions out. You get to get a little bit more objective. So when you take it to the person, you're able to deliver it a lot better. Because if you're super emotional or resentful about something, it's not just their reaction. You don't know what you might do. You might overly exaggerate or overly or have your emotions get the best of you. And then you're going to owe an amends to somebody. So but yeah, so when you have questions like this, I hope you guys start utilizing this link. I haven't talked about it in a while, but it's wonderful. And I just pop you on, and it's kind of, we just go live by live, and I'd be able to provide any support that you might have. So yeah, that was that. But I am going to start wrapping up here in a few minutes. If there's any side comments or anything you guys want to pop up, I'll put them up and kind of recap. But today's main talk was about emotional sobriety. And when you stop the drink and the drug, then you got to live life on life's terms. And it's getting right with everything in your past, getting right with what's going on right now, and getting right with what's about to happen. Because regardless if you're an addict or alcoholic, or you're a family member of an addict alcoholic, or you're just a human being, life's going to keep on moving forward. And how you respond to life in the here and now is going to dictate the quality of life and the peace of mind that you're going to have. I truly, truly believe in that. And it's something that I strive for every day. Can I be more emotionally mature, emotionally sound today than I was yesterday? And if I can, then good. And I hope I can maintain that same motivation tomorrow. So as you guys have seen, and thank you, Eileen, I appreciate the continued support. I mean, you've been supporting me here for a year and a bunch of months. And Bailey, this is cool. Thank you. I really needed this today. I'm happy that you were able to, and I know you're watching from back home now. You're always welcome for this thing. Come watching it. This is Hossein. Yeah, you got it. This one's really important. I know this one was something that we talked about, and I hope I was able to cover some points you wanted to get a little bit more information on, and feel free to rewatch it. Lynn, thank you. I know you've been on with us a few weeks ago. Mama Munker, appreciate you. Mom, great talk. I will see you today at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for whatever that place is. We're going to go have dinner. Yeah, but hey, I appreciate you guys. This is really cool. And I love doing this. You can count on me to continue doing this. We got Debbie. Thank you so much. Always appreciate everything you discussed. This was important stuff today. It really was. And not just for your loved one, Debbie. It's this for you guys too. Dan, there you go. Back it up, man. I appreciate you. Yeah, you guys are wonderful, man. So we have a good little crew here. Feel free to share these with whoever you like. I do believe that the recovery world needs to hear more of this. This kind of stuff usually doesn't get talked about. We just talk about the drink and the drug, and we don't talk about life after the drink and the drug. So that's what I'm here for. And again, we've been doing this since April of 2020 on Zoom. So for those of you who've been watching this whole time, man, that's pretty cool. So love and appreciate you guys. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.